welcome to our July Wellbeing webinar. I'm Dr. Jackie Colley and I will be your host for today. Our topic is on resilience, why it's important, what it is, and how to build and cultivate it. Now, did you know that resilience is a skill that can be learned and well developed over time? So it's not just something that you're born with, it's when you're facing life's challenges and learning and growing through them that you build strength of character and resilience. So let's talk a little bit about why resilience is important in the workplace. Being able to face the challenges that come before you with confidence and the ability to calmly manage and move through that difficult situation is really important because it helps you build confidence as you work with these different struggles and find that you can find a successful outcome. And it also allows you to cultivate self-awareness by going through the process of really accepting what the situation is and looking to find solutions and a path forward. In addition to that, it's found to really improve engagement in the workplace and can really help to build your problem-solving skills and creative thinking ability. So resilience, again, it's that ability to move through when facing a life's challenge with a little bit of grace and ability to bounce back a little bit more quickly and feel less stressed, less anxious, actually even have a better quality of life when you're faced with these situations. And we all face these situations. The interesting thing about resilience is that it differs from one person to another and can even differ from one situation from another for the same person. For example, you're on your way to work, you get a fender bender, it's a nuisance, you pull off the side of the road, you deal with it, etc., and you move on with the rest of your day. In that situation, you handled it pretty calmly, it was no big deal, it's a bummer, but hey, it's just more of a nuisance than anything else. Compare that to being told that you have a particular illness, a medical illness that's sudden, not expected, and is going to need a course of treatment. In that situation, you might have different coping skills and less of an ability to navigate that as easily as you did as the fender bender. And so for each person, their level of resilience in certain situations differs, and resilience is different from one person to another. The important thing here is, regardless of your level of resilience, you can develop it and make it even stronger. So let's talk a little bit about what are those core components or characteristics that we see in people with a higher level of resilience or more well-developed resilience. There's a number of different models for resilience that are out there that are being taught to our children and to others across the United States. They all have these common characteristics across all of them. So let's go into them in a little bit more detail. The first one is a growth mindset. Now, a few months back, we talked about mindset and how you can choose your mindset. And it's true, you can. Having a growth mindset, that means you're being open to the situation and what you can learn from it. You understand that life's challenges or adversities are teachers in a way and can help us learn and grow because you've used your growth mindset in the past and that positive attitude to help you navigate, move through, and succeed in getting past one of life's challenges in the past. So that growth mindset, staying open, staying curious, and staying positive with your attitude is a really important characteristic in people with higher levels of resilience. So what is number two? Number two is rest. This might surprise you a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense. When we have an adverse event, when we face a challenge in our life, depending on that challenge, it can be exhausting for us emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. And that's why it's really important to be able to give yourself some rest, some time, and some space in order to recover a little bit from the shock. If you think about it, a lot of people will go through and they'll say, oh my, I didn't expect this. Oh no, this can't happen to me. Why me? Why now? Why us? And so there's this shock level to it. So being able to step away and allow your mind, body, and spirit to rest is really important. That will set you up for some of the steps in the process that we'll talk a little bit later. A third really important component or characteristic that you'll see in people with higher levels of resilience is hope. Now that's not surprising, right? The higher your level of hope or trust in yourself or others to be able to move through this life challenge and get to the other side successfully is really key. And you'll often hear it combined with faith, so that there's a hopefulness and faith that you will be able to move through this and into a new place afterwards, and it'll be better for you, or at least you'll be able to survive it and be able to navigate it and manage it a little bit more easily. So hope is another important characteristic that you'll see in people with more well-developed resiliency. The next one is gratitude. And again, this one probably makes sense as well. And you say, well, wait, Jackie, how can you have gratitude when you're being faced with a challenging situation? Well, that's just the thing. Gratitude and a positive attitude are choices that we make. And gratitude, or expressing gratitude, is actually a practice that makes people feel better and can help reduce stress and anxiety. So, for example, you may have that fender bender, but your car is drivable and you can continue to work. In that situation, you may be very grateful that there was no physical injury, that your car is drivable, that it is a nuisance, but it is not hurting anyone from a life perspective, or totaling your car so that you won't be able to have the transportation that you need. The same thing with an illness or an unexpected surgery. There's always an ability for us to look at what we're going through, see what others have gone through or are going through, and tell ourselves it could have been worse. It might have been worse. So I'm grateful that it's not, and I'm grateful for what I have. And that leads us to a next really important characteristic, and that's connectedness. Part of that gratitude is being really grateful for the others in your life that support you. So having that sense of connectedness is very important. All of us as humans need to feel connected and part of a community. We need to feel accepted. And so having a strong social network that can support you and that you can lean on in tough times is really important. And another important characteristic of someone who's a little bit more resilient than others: connectedness. Again, going back to that gratitude and being able to lean on your social network when you need to, and let them support you when you're going through tough times, just like you're there for them when they're going through their tough times. The next is self-compassion. Again, this makes a lot of sense. You lose a big client in the workplace, or you're the one that causes the fender bender. It's really easy for us to let that negative self-talk come in. And that's where having that growth mindset can be helpful, trying to have that more positive attitude, and also just trying to stay kind to ourselves and to others, and to really take time to allow ourselves some grace as we move some of these tough challenges, which may have been something that we caused, right? I mean, maybe we lost that important client at work, or we made a mistake and that allowed for a breach of data at work, or something along those lines. We're human. We make mistakes. We're not perfect. And that's okay, because that's part of being human. And so it's important for us to express compassion for ourselves as well as others as we move through a difficult time. And next comes curiosity. And this, again, I think makes a lot of sense, right? Because if you have a growth mindset, you're staying open and you're staying curious. What can this situation teach you? What can you learn and take away from that loss of the important client, or poor performance review, or just even a meeting that didn't go as well as you thought it could? By giving yourself some space and rest, reflection, and being self-compassionate, staying open, you can find what those lessons are and then be able to adapt, maybe self-correct a little bit better, be a little bit more self-aware, and develop the skills that you need to be more successful in that next situation at work. And then finally, This one, I think, makes a lot of sense. People who are more resilient trying to find the meaning in what happened. Not that every little struggle in life is going to have some huge spiritual meaning for you or some significant aha moment, but some will. And oftentimes it's the tougher ones for us that really test us, and we have to dig deep. We have to really go deep within ourselves and find the strength and find the character to move through that really tough, turbulent time for ourselves. And that's where, again, reflection and rest can help us by staying open and curious, find some meaning in what happened so that we can take that information and find a way to move forward in a way that is positive, might help other people in a similar situation, even to inspire other people. So those are the core characteristics, and I'll go through them once again, and we'll have this information for you on the website. The first is making sure that you have a growth mindset. The second, ensure that you give yourself time to rest, both time and space. Third, make sure that you keep yourself hopeful, have trust in yourself and in the process. Remember, these are life lessons for a reason. These all happen to us on our life journey. So be open to it and understand that this too shall pass. It's one of the things I say a lot to myself. Express gratitude. Make sure that you're giving yourself and others compassion, so that's self-compassion. Use your social network. Use the other people in your life to support yourself through that sense of connection. Keep yourself curious and look to find meaning wherever you can. All right, so that sounds great. We understand the characteristics and what makes up a more resilient person, why it's important in the workplace, the fact that it differs from person to person, and we also understand it could differ even in situations from one day to another for each one of us individually. So then let's talk about how do you actually take these things and build more resilience in your life? How do you embrace these adversities and move forward? Well, I like to use a 3-step process that combines some of these elements that we talked about in order to help move through a tough time a little bit more easily. It's 3 phases, where the first phase is recover. The second phase is regroup. And third is to grow. So let's go through the first one, first phase. So when I think about the first phase and I think about recovering, it's around rest, reflection, and acceptance. So let's go and unpack that a little bit more. The rest, as I mentioned, is really important. There's a shock. The shock may be huge or it may be minimal, but still there's a shock. There's a shock to our system. There's a shock to us physically. There's a shock to us mentally and emotionally in having to deal with this situation. Whatever that happens to be for you, you have to acknowledge there's a bit of shock. Oh no, this didn't happen. Oh my gosh, why now? Why me? What's going on? This can't happen to me. Yeah, it did. So you have to give yourself some time to rest so that you can move back from that exhaustion mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and really take the time to allow yourself some space, some grace, some time to rest. And then as you do that, it'll give you a chance to reflect on the event or situation, to look at it a little bit more objectively, and to finally not only acknowledge that it happened, but move to an acceptance phase. Oh no, it couldn't happen, but it did. It did, and it will have consequences, and that situation is something that you're going to need to work through. And so being able to first rest and reduce a little bit of that shock to your system, allow yourself to reflect and be a little bit more objective about what happened, try to keep some of the emotions out of it, and allow yourself to just reflect on what was the event, what was the situation or problem, what is my role in that situation or problem, what do I need to think about for the next phase. And that's where the acceptance comes in. A lot of times we're in a bit of denial that something like this could happen to us. Even the little things can sometimes seem really big, and again, we ask ourselves why why me, why now, why us, this can't happen, but it did. So you need to accept it so that you can process through it, that you can learn from it, that you can problem solve and find solutions to your situation, and then move forward stronger, more character, more confidence, more empowered. So let's move then to that next phase, regroup. Now, when I think about regrouping, it's stepping back after that reflection, giving your chance to just breathe and reduce some of that level of shock to yourself. And say, okay, I get this, I acknowledge it and I accept it. Now I need to figure out, what do I do? Where do I need to flex or adapt to this situation to be able to move forward? What do I need to integrate? When we think about integration, it's really around taking pieces and putting it back together as a more whole thing. So as you're integrating pieces of data and information that you're learning about going through this event, that's what I mean by integrate. It's not just adapting to the situation and going left instead of right, or sending this email versus that email. It's really about how you stay curious and learn and be objective and problem solve to really understand, what was my role in this? Is there something that I could have done different or better? Did I make a mistake? And if I did, what was the basis of that mistake? What's the root for that? Can I stay curious and figure out, where do I adapt to move forward and be able to integrate what I'm learning so that I can be an even better, whatever your job is, whatever your role is, mom, sister, brother, whatever. And so that's where I really think about regroup. So it's, a lot of times we talk about resilient people being able to bounce back. I think it's because when they get the chance to regroup, because again, you stepped back, you reflected, you rested, you took acceptance and acknowledgement of the situation. You said, okay, I get it. Now I need to figure out a way to move forward through this. So in that situation, let's go back to the fender bender. So you're on, if you're down in the Tampa area, there's a lot of fender benders all the time, Florida in general. So you're driving down the road, you're on your way to work, someone in stop and go traffic barrels into you and you got this fender bender. You pull off the road, you share your information. Afterwards though, it's a shock to your system, right? You're feeling racing heart rate, sweaty palms. Oh my gosh, I'm late to work. I gotta text people at work, etc. So do you rush off and just rush off to work because your car is still drivable? No, because remember, you went through that recovery part. So no, you stopped off the road and you pulled off the road and you allowed yourself to breathe and settle down, reflect a little bit on what happened and say, okay, what do I need to do next? And that's where the regroup and the adapt or integrate might come from or come to you. So in this situation, you say, okay, I'm going to be late to work and I can be frantic and I can drive and maybe even get in another accident, or I can take just 15 minutes to do some deep breathing, collect myself, settle myself down, reach out to my insurance company so that I can get that claim started, etc. I will follow up with my coworkers and see if they can't support me. Remember, you're connected. So let them support me and pick up the slack for just that little while so that I can allow myself to breathe and regroup and figure out what I need to do next. Oh yeah, and the car is brand new. You picked it up a few weeks ago. You just changed your insurance carrier. How do I deal with this? What am I going to do? Oh my gosh, is that going to mean my rates are going to go up, etc.? Well, as you regroup and you kind of go through that, okay, I got to adapt. What I need to adapt. I'll go to work a little bit later. I'll reach out to the claims agent, etc. And then you start to integrate. You realize, okay, I was hit from behind, so that means the other person is going to be most likely at fault. It shouldn't impact my insurance, and my rate should be okay. My car is still drivable. Next, I need to figure out just getting it taken care of. I know I'll call my dealership and do that now before I get back on the road so that I can feel a little bit more settled. I'm managing the situation. I'm managing through it. Okay, great, Jackie, you say. It's a fender bender. Those happen in life. Those are pretty straightforward. What about other areas where you have to really regroup, adapt, and integrate? Oh, well, let's go into one of those. You walk into work and your boss calls you into their office and tells you that your job is going to be eliminated in just a few weeks. That's a shock to the system. And you're going to need to step back and reflect on that one. It's going to take a little while to accept. So in phase one, what you do is go back to your office. Maybe you say to your boss that you're going to need to take the rest of the afternoon off just to process this information. It's a big shock to you. And so you go home, you rest, reflect, maybe even cry. I know I did when that happened to me. I shed a few tears and I certainly was a little bit shocked. But you have to accept these things do happen, and that's where the regrouping time and that reflection can be really important. So when I went through that process myself, or others of you may have gotten laid off in the past during the pandemic, etc., you really have to regroup and think, where do I adapt? What do I need to integrate? So you may look back at your performance and say, hey, I probably could have been a better active listener in meetings and with my team members. Or perhaps it was your project management skills, or something that you did in a presentation that just didn't come over as well as you would have liked it. Maybe it's the team member feedback that you got, from your team that you manage, that you start to take to heart a little bit more. Maybe what your boss said to you in your most recent performance review. You can sit back and say, well, where do I need to adapt my behavior? And where are there skills that I might need to develop further so that I can integrate them and be an even better boss, better manager, better worker, employee in the future? Or you could go through that process and say, okay, I'm not going to just work on my active listening skills and presentation skills as I apply for another job. I'm going to regroup and think about things a little bit differently. Maybe I will decide that this is an opportunity for me to live closer to family, or live in a city or a country that I've never been to and work there instead. Change my profession altogether. There's all kinds of things that you can go through as you go through that regrouping process. And people with a higher level of resilience that's a little bit more well developed, will do that regrouping process and really look to see, where can I adapt or want to adapt? Where do I want to integrate? What do I need to integrate or work on? Does that make sense? All right, so then what's next? Phase 3. Now, phase 3 can be a phase that sometimes can take a little bit longer. And in phase 3, it's that grow phase. And so in this one, we're finding meaning, trying to think about the situation or the struggle, the curveball we weren't expecting, and to really try to find some meaning from it that we can hold on to because we're hopeful, right? And we've expressed gratitude that it could have been worse. So let's express gratitude and let's find a path forward. And so in the situation of losing your job, it could be that you say, you know what? I really want to move closer to family, or I want to get a master's degree. Or perhaps it was a sudden illness that you are struggling with. And in that illness, you had to have a surgery that affected functionality of arms or legs or something along those lines. And as you moved through that process and gained your strength and gained back some of your functionality through rehabilitation and the exercises your physical therapist gave you, etc., you took the time to regroup and think about, what do I want to adapt and integrate, and where there's meaning in this. And you decide that what I really want to do is go back to school, and I want to learn to be a physical therapist so I can help others, because I understand how hard it is to go through this kind of process myself. In that situation, the person is finding meaning in that surgery, unexpected injury, whatever it happened to be, and that loss of functionality, which might have been temporary or permanent, and find some way to take that and adapt and move forward in a path that allows you to even help others or inspire others in the future. I think that path forward is really important, because I mean, situations, they run the gamut, right? It could be a hiccup at work, like you think there's a hacker and the IT system shuts down and you're offline for a day and you got to figure out a quick solution to how to capture everything and get it back into the system the next day. In that situation, your path forward is you kind of regrouped, you adapted to it by saying, we'll go to paper. We'll write everything down. And the way that we're going to take care of this in the future is we'll make sure we have a good downtime policy, because maybe your office was small and you don't have one. And then as far as finding meaning in it, you're like, okay, at least we didn't get hacked. I'm going to express gratitude. It's just a nuisance. The IT system's down today, but we'll get it back online for tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day. And so you can find meaning by bringing your team together at work and say, we're all going through this together. It's a little bit tough today. Road's going to get better. It could have been worse. Let's find our path forward together and figure out a way together to find a solution of how to get all of work from today into the system so that we can start fresh tomorrow. And perhaps the team responds to that in a really positive way and says, yeah, we're in this with you. We're going to help get everything back into the system by coming in 2 hours earlier tomorrow. And we'll have a pizza party or an ice cream party or whatever works for you. So those are the 3 phases that I like to think about. First is in that recovery phase, so that we're really giving ourselves, or others that are involved in this, some space and grace to rest and reduce that shock level, reflect a little bit, be able to accept what's happened, and then move to phase 2 to really regroup and think about, what do you need to change? What do you need to integrate? What do you need to let go of? How do you think about the problem solving to get to the solution? And then finally growing from the process, taking everything that you've learned and try to integrate and adapt and finding meaning in it and finding a path forward that's a positive one for you and whomever else is involved in that situation with you. So that's a way that I like to think about moving through those really tough life struggles that pop up from time to time, and try to synthesize or bring together those common elements that we find in people that are well developed from a resiliency standpoint. To share a little bit with you my story. My daughter's so sweet. She'll put on Facebook, oh, my mom's the strongest, most resilient person that I know. And I would say that I'm a tough cookie when times get tough, because I've had to go through a fair amount of adversity in my life. And one of those struggles was just about a year ago. That's why this whole talk about resilience is really special to me personally, because just about a year ago, I got up and had a syncopal event, which is a sudden fainting spell that I wasn't aware of. So it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And so 1 second I was standing up and the next second I was down on the ground. And in the process of falling, I hit my head, in the back of my head, and got a big cut in the back of my head. But that wasn't the worst part. I came to and I was in a lot of pain. My husband responded very quickly and came over to me. I remember in my head I was saying, oh no, oh no, oh no, this can't be happening. And my husband's trying to stop the flow of blood. It was in the summertime. We had guests up at our camp. They're all freaking out as well. And so we rush off to the emergency department, and there I find that I not only had a bad cut on the head and was in pain, I had actually broken my neck in a couple of places. And what's really bad about that is I'd already had a couple of neck surgeries. And so for them to fix me, for them to heal what happened traumatically to me, I had to go through a couple of surgeries. And the result is that if you did an x-ray of my neck, I look like RoboCop. I mean, really, truly. I have titanium rods with all kinds of hardware, and it was a pretty brutal couple of days as far as pain is concerned. And my family was in shock. They were scared for me, and I was scared for me, and there was a lot of pain, and they could see that I was suffering, and so it was very difficult for my family members as well. I ended up being in the hospital for 5 days because the reason I had fainted was my blood pressure was dropping and it couldn't come back up. So every time I tried to sit up or to stand at the hospital, my blood pressure would just drop down again. So I had a concussion. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't sit up very well because of my blood pressure dropping, and then I was in enormous pain. Had a giant cervical collar on, blood all over me in the hospital. So I look like a wreck. I look like a train wreck. I was able to go home after 5 days, and putting resilience into play, I'll just kind of share my experience with you. So when I talk about that recover phase, I was physically in pain. I needed to physically heal. Mentally and emotionally, it kind of made me a wreck. I had to spend 2 months out of work. I was in a cervical collar for almost that same amount of time. There was a lot of discomfort with it, and being in, having to be forcibly resting myself to heal physically and mentally made me also think about things from a spiritual and emotional standpoint. And it was an opportunity for me to really look at how I was operating in my life now, how I had operated in my life in the past, and accept that this had happened to me, and really reflect around my responsibility in what happened to me. Because during that time frame, I was pretty exhausted from my work schedule. I had been having symptoms related to my neck surgeries from the previous couple of surgeries and wasn't getting them resolved as quickly as I should be because of my work schedule. And so when I got to that phase 2, where I had to start to regroup and ask myself, okay, where do I adapt and integrate things? Well, I was still processing even just all of the physical stuff. And that's where some of those other elements came in for me. It's like, one was leaning on other people, which is not one of my strengths. So I really had to rely on others just on basic, everyday, daily living skills like showering and getting dressed and preparing meals. I had to really lean on my family. I had to lean on my coworkers, which ended up being a really positive thing because my team, I asked them to take up more responsibility. And that helped them with their self-confidence and their leadership skills, which I think was really important. I may have been even holding them back a little bit by doing too much for my team, which is one of my people-pleasing, perfectionist things that I do as a nurturer, etc. And it also gave me the chance to really express gratitude, because I recognized that I could have died, or I could have damaged my spinal cord, and it could have been much worse. So even though it stunk, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It could have been worse. So through that process of resting and reflecting and acceptance, I really put that hope into gear, and I leaned on my social network and support, and I expressed gratitude, and I tried to keep an open mind. And so as I was regrouping and looking at what I needed to adapt or integrate, it was clear I was not going to be able to work at the same level I was before. The number of hours on the computer, the number of hours in general, that the stress wasn't good for me. I was probably going to need to cut back from work in the near term, relatively near term, within a year, to think about working a different type of role or just changing my priorities in general. And what I integrated through that process also was more of a spiritual awareness, more of a self-awareness of where I was my own worst enemy with my schedule and the need to balance better, and that I was pretty close to burnout at that time in my life too, having worked all through the pandemic and with a number of other, besides my own surgeries, a number of medical issues for my other family members. And so it really gave me the chance to think about what I needed to do to adapt. As far as growing from it, I think I grew from it personally and professionally. I grew from it emotionally and spiritually. And the way that I found meaning in it was looking at what was really important to me for my priorities and realizing that what I was doing as a physician executive was not where I wanted to spend my time in the future. I love healthcare. I love working with patients. I love doing things to make systems of care better for people. And I also knew that there were other things that I could do to help other people. So what I chose to do was to start this business, the Delana Institute for Growth and Wellness. And I felt I found a lot of meaning in what I had gone through to move forward and help to build skills in other people, like being more resilient and finding a path forward when things sometimes get rough. And so my path forward was to start a new business, to plan for the future, to plan to write a book, and plan to do wellness and life coaching in order to help others grow and develop themselves from a personal perspective, very holistically. For me, wellness is very holistic, and really including intentionally moving forward to help your body, mind, and spirit. The late fall, when my position was eliminated, it happened within months, and sometimes that's how manifesting works. Within months, my position was eliminated. I had already started to adjust my work schedule, how I worked, where I worked, etc. And I was able to take an early retirement and start to move forward with this business as well. So I definitely have had my life's bumps and bruises along the way. Having that growth mindset, being curious and staying open really does help one adjust to those life situations and find creative and innovative and new ways of coming to solutions and problem solving. I think each time that I've gone through some trial or tribulation, it's allowed for me to grow in some way and become more confident and more empowered. And so you can do this too. You understand now what those core characteristics are and the things to make sure that you keep in mind when you are faced with one of life's trials and tribulations or some adverse situation. Again, going back to that, it's having that growth mindset. It's taking time to rest and that space to rest, reflecting and staying hopeful, really leaning on those that you have from a social network perspective and staying connected, expressing gratitude, because it can always be worse most of the time, or 99.9% of the time. And besides the connectedness, staying curious, again, going back to that positive attitude and growth mindset, and trying to find some meaning so that you can get that path forward. Using a phased approach may help you in that, or at least give you a little structure to try next time that you're faced with one of life's little curveballs. And so again, the first phase is to recover, give yourself time to rest, reflect, and accept. Next phase is to regroup. Step back, be curious, be open. What can you learn from this? And what do you need to adapt? What do you need to take responsibility for and integrate going forward? How can you find a solution? And then move to the third step, which is growth. How can you grow? How can you learn? How can you develop even more into the most authentic, best, highest person that you can be? And when I mean highest, I mean reaching your highest potential, being your best authentic self. Because remember, when you go through these life's challenges, they make you stronger. They make you more self-aware. They push you to grow. And so when you have to dig deep and use that grit and stay tenacious to keep moving forward, you are being more you. You're finding more of you. And that's really important. And leaning on others and allowing yourself to be seen as vulnerable, allowing yourself to be vulnerable is again really important too, because that helps you as you move through this process and lean on others to find your more authentic self and be the best that you can be. Life isn't always easy. Some of the situations that we have to face are pretty awful, and we all can get through them with grace and support and higher level of resiliency. I know that you can. If you're interested in learning more, you want to feel more empowered as you're dealing with life situations, you want to focus on building those resilient skills a little bit more, please feel free to reach out to our website and schedule some free time with me. We can chat a little bit more about how we might be able to support and help you moving forward. I really appreciate you coming and spending some time with us in July in this recorded well-being webinar. And we will be back in August live. So it'll be on Wednesday, August 14th. It'll be at noon and would love to see you there. Our topic next month will be on self-awareness. So thanks again for joining me. Thank you for listening to my story, and thank you for wanting to be your best authentic self as well. I wish you a great day, and again, if there's anything that we can do to help you build your level of resilience, just reach out and we'll schedule a call. Bye.